Brooke, chances are good that everyone who is listening right now at some point has worked with someone who is just a colossal pain in the ass.
Yeah, and you and I have probably worked with the same ones because I feel like we've had how many jobs together at this point?
Yeah, and we're currently working with all of them, right?
Bunch of assholes.
Just kidding. We love our team. But according to a new Rolling Stone article, it looks like one of the Queer Eye Fab Five might actually just be a very difficult diva.
Yeah, and the examples of their unpredictable behavior that Rolling Stone details are definitely giving Ellen DeGeneres and James Corden vibes.
The worst vibes to ever give.
Yes.
Reevaluate
absolutely.
your life if you're ever being compared to either of these two human beings.
Yeah.
From Wondery, I'm Arisha Skidmore-Williams.
And I'm Brooke Sifrin. It's Wednesday, March 6th.
And you're listening to Rich and Daily.
By you choosing to be so radical, to not subscribe to the shame the society that you have been brought up in puts on gay men is radical. And you don't have to do that by dressing like this. You can radically love yourself just in your heart.
So that's Jonathan Van Ness, one of Queer Eye's Fab Five. And when the show debuted on Netflix in 2018, they quickly became a fan favorite thanks to the feel-good moments they brought to the mix, kind of like the one we just watched / listened to.
I thought you were going to say kind of like us.
And also like
feel
us.
good moments.
Immediate. Yeah, we've got so many of those on this show.
Uh-huh.
But audiences fell in love with Jonathan, who uses they, he, she pronouns, thanks to their sassy one-liners and inspirational pep talks. But now, according to a new Rolling Stone article that dropped yesterday, Jonathan's good vibes might have only been in front of the camera, and that what goes on behind the scenes is actually a completely different, way less fun story.
Yeah, which is so often the case, it seems.
I don't believe anybody anymore.
Yeah. So in the article, multiple Queer Eye production sources who worked on the show say Jonathan is awful to work with. The sources use words like monster, nightmare, and demeaning to describe Jonathan. And others say JVN is emotionally abusive and has rage issues. One of the sources said there's a real emotion of fear around them when they get angry. It's intense and scary. Another production source calls Jonathan a yeller and says they'd explode at least once a week while filming Queer Eye.
I am so tired of adult humans yelling at other adult humans. Just yelling in general. It's such a weird thing to do. I always just get so triggered because I had a boss once at a talent agency who yelled. And it's just like, stop it.
This is the one here in LA that you worked at? Well, obviously. It's not like you were working at a talent agency.
No, the talent agency over in Severna Park, Maryland. Constantly booking big talent.
Yeah. So someone else told Rolling Stone that Jonathan could definitely be warm and charismatic, but would still yell at someone at least once a day. Someone else said, as much good as they want to do in the world, I think a lot of it is very hypocritical. There's a definite contrast between the principles and the values that Jonathan stands for publicly. And Rolling Stone also reports that things with Jonathan got so bad that Netflix execs actually had to meet with them over their behavior, but that nothing really changed, obviously.
Just classic corporate being like, hey, you're being an asshole, stop it. And they're like, not going to. And they're like, okay, well, we had our meeting. That's all we can do.
Yep. Get back out there and make us some money.
Yeah. So according to people who spoke to Rolling Stone, Jonathan's bad behavior contributed to the Fab Five growing apart. One person says there was absolutely tension between everybody else, especially from Jonathan, because they didn't want to ever share the spotlight. Mm-hmm. They also say that things got so bad between the five hosts that there were times when they couldn't be in the same scenes with each other.
So apparently by the time they started filming season 7 in New Orleans in 2022, the dynamic between the Fab Five had become a cordial working relationship. I feel like in this article, they talked about New Orleans so much. It's like, looking back at New Orleans. It's like The Goods when they talk about being in Kirky. You know that movie, The Goods? And they're like, well, what happened back in Kirky? Oh, my God. It's such
I've literally never even heard the name The Goods to know that that's a movie.
Jeremy
I thought you were talking about a band.
Come on, man. It's so good.
Sorry, I watch quality movies.
Okay. So fans obviously noticed this dynamic, like when Tan France was the only Fab Five member invited to Anthony Porofsky's bachelor party, which, like, yikes. And one person confirmed to Rolling Stone that the Fab Five's relationship definitely changed since season 1. And another source said, how is it not obvious to everybody that none of these people are friends? None of them. They don't hang out socially. They live very different lives.
Yeah. And the thing is, the article is not all about Jonathan Van Ness. Last fall, we actually talked about how Bobby Berk, who was the show's interior design expert, he announced that he was leaving the show. And there was, of course, a lot of speculation about why, including rumors of a rift between him and the rest of the cast. Now, according to the Rolling Stone, some of that is actually true. Apparently, Bobby didn't get along with either Jonathan or Tan, and he was pretty much checked out during that season in New Orleans. Back to New Orleans. That's where it all began and ended.
Yeah.
Bobby opened up about his decision to leave Queer Eye in a Vanity Fair article back in January. And in that, he claims that the crew and all 5 of the Queer Eye cast thought they were done with the show after the last season wrapped.
Yeah, but then Netflix renewed the show for 4 seasons. And since Bobby had already made other plans and wasn't willing to change them, that was it. He was done. And Bobby told Vanity Fair that he thought it was an all or nothing situation for the cast, where if one of them didn't come back, none of them would. And he said, I was like, I'm not going to be having FOMO because the show's not going to happen. Now, in the Rolling Stone article, sources claim that at some point during this limbo period, when they didn't know if the show was going to be renewed, Tan and Anthony were actively campaigning to replace Bobby with their interior designer friend, Jeremiah Brent. And apparently Bobby had no idea about this. And one source called it mean girl antics. And that lobbying apparently worked, because Jeremiah was named as Bobby's replacement just on Tuesday and will be featured in the next season of Queer Eye, which is going to be based in Las Vegas and drop sometime in 2025. So maybe I'll see somebody I know on there.
Yeah. Can't wait.
Yeah.
So, Brooke, it looks like things aren't so hunky-dory behind the scenes of Queer Eye. What are your thoughts about this? It's almost like television isn't real.
I know. Who would have thought? Well, it's like, when you have 5 personalities working together, of course they're not all going to be best friends.
Let's just say it's not the Friends cast.
Exactly. Did these guys go to Vegas
die together
before they hit it big? But it's like, this isn't surprising. It's not like you can't cast 5 people and expect them to just be best friends. Like, that's ridiculous. But
it's a lot of egos.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, especially when you're becoming stars.
I know. Fortunately, we just have 2 egos to contend with.
I know.
Can you imagine if we had 3 other people in this group?
I can't. That's why we'll never have a girl group, a singing group.
Yeah, that's the reason why.
But you and I both know 2 people who have worked with JVN, and neither of those people made it seem like working with Jonathan was some kind of nightmare.
Yeah.
But and there's so many comments on Instagram. They're like, there's no way this is true. Blah, blah, blah. I'm blinded by the facade. So it's like, just because some people didn't have this experience doesn't mean others didn't.
Right,
so it kind of becomes a thin line between where is it advocating for your friend and saying that this person isn't terrible, and when is it invalidating others' experiences? So it's
right. It's a very thin line. Yeah, it's interesting because, nobody went on record on this in this article, which I get. In the article they cited, they were like, they spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of like career repercussions, and also they don't want to get in trouble, which I get.
And they have NDAs,
Well, yeah, and NDAs, which technically aren't as binding as people think they are.
Yeah. Well, if there's abuse, I think you can speak out
exactly
against an NDA.
Yeah. It's not like it's like, I'm going to kill you, but it's an NDA, so you can't tell anyone.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I feel like, there's that quote that's like, look at how somebody treats people that are lower than them. And that's like their true character. So it's like, friends of people aren't going to, it's like Ashton Kutcher and that idiot. Like, friends aren't the ones being yelled at generally.
Exactly.
It's like, it's the production staff doesn't make it all right at all. They're, I'm sure like talent comes in, and this is a tale as old as time. Like on sets, there are people that are just complete assholes to other people. Tom Cruise, anyone? And it's like, that is not okay. And so if people are, I believe production more than I'll believe anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've both been on many sets before. I was a PA many times. Like people just, and I was a PA on like fake productions and they all had egos still. And it's just like, I believe it. I mean, I believe that there's an attitude here. I believe that, you know, it's 5 very big personalities that are just pretending to be friends. And it definitely kind of feels like the wool's pulled over our eyes.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's why we see people asking if our friendship is real. Because it's like, it seems like we're basically them, but real. But it's like, because sometimes it's like, that's not real. That's not real. And I think it helps that we actually have an established relationship.
I know.
Whereas these were 5 guys that were flown out to audition.
Yeah.
So much for those chemistry tests.
Which they probably did well in chemistry tests. Well, obviously, they seem to be good at faking a persona, if this is all true.
Yeah, and the article did compare them to like a boy band.
A boy band, yeah.
And I think that's the same thing. You always have one that kind of shines, and the others are just like trying to get something. But, you know, I don't know. I guess we'll just see what happens in Vegas. It's not going to stay there.
Are we gonna? Yeah, is it going to stay there? Like...
New Orleans is just, they're just like constantly screaming from the rooftops what happened there. Nothing is sacred anymore.
Showing titties and showing secrets over there. And we love it.
That's on the New Orleans flag.
Yep.
From Wondery, I'm Marisha Skidmore-Williams.
And I'm Brooke Sifrin. This is Rich and Daily.
See you tomorrow, Richies.
If you like our show, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you're listening right now.
Be sure to follow us on all socials at Arisha Skidmore-Williams and at Brooke Sifrin. We love to connect with you.